Well, this is shockingly awesome. Like, well, I mean, you think about doing a tech event in Asheville, and you expect 20 people to sign up and 3 to show up. So we've got like 35 people in this room. So that's actually like shockingly fabulous right there. For all the young people in the audience, just realize people like me kind of pull weird ideas out of our ass, and we're kind of expecting to completely and utterly fail. And then we do something, and we're like, oh my God, I didn't fail. Holy hell, that's wonderful. So anyways, if people don't know who I am, I'm known as Eli the Computer Guy on YouTube. I've been doing technology since 1996. I was in the military, I was in the corporate world, I was a consultant, I had my own business. I zigged when I should have zagged when the last recession happened. Wound up being a YouTube personality, and now I've got 1 million plus subscribers on YouTube. The interesting thing on YouTube is you find out how much you matter to the world, which is very bizarre. Like literally, I was up at the bar a few months ago after a long day, I was tired, and this guy comes up to me and is like, oh my golly. And I'm like, yeah, I'm Eli the Computer Guy. He's like, no, you don't understand. It's like 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, oh, what don't I understand? And he literally looked at me. He was like, I'm from Africa, and my village did not have an internet connection. So I used to walk to a village with an internet connection to download your videos, go back to my village to watch your videos, and now he's in university in Cincinnati. Which is just like, it's one of those days when you're just like, I don't even know what to say to that. That's a hell of a thing. And so basically, with social media, it's worse than most people realize. I've been doing this for 14 years at this point. It is a complete and utter disaster in so many different ways. So as the tech world goes, you gotta find a new job. And so basically my thought process is, I have helped so many people literally around the world doing what I do. What if we did that in a physical environment? And so that's where I talk about authorityless, gatekeeperless, free to the end user, hands-on technology education that empowers you to do whatever the hell it is that you want to do. Basically, this is the motto of the YouTube world. What if we just had tech education that was available, as long as you play nice, that's the only rule, right? We do not resource anybody to tell you no. And so that's what I'm trying to do with Silicon Dojo. One thing to know, again, I do believe in inclusivity. I know in the modern world, you start saying inclusivity and people on every side of the equation start losing their damn minds. I've cared about this for decades. I've been a trustee of a foundation. I have a degree in criminal justice, a whole bunch of different things. When I talk about inclusivity, basically, I just want people to be able to come. Even if I hate your politics, it does not make my life any better if you're homeless. Right? Even if we're on different sides of the equation, it doesn't help if you're starving to death, which is literally what we're getting to in our society. And so basically, one of the big things with inclusivity, so like with us, we have cookies here. Now that's a purple cow thing, we'll get into that later. But anyways, one of the things is, I've talked with a lot of people in Asheville, and alcohol is wonderful, and beer is wonderful, but by God, there is so much of it, and a lot of people don't feel comfortable in alcohol environments. And so it's like, you know what? We have enough alcohol here. Let's do cookies. Let's do that type of thing. And so that's basically what I'm trying to do. Make sure everybody, tries to feel comfortable. Again, you should feel stupid because you don't understand API calls, not because of other stuff. Let's see here. And again, like with that, I know everybody thinks it's cute anymore. Please leave politics outside. Again, the only red and blue I care about are LEDs that blink, quite literally. Let's see here. One of the things I do want to do with these types of events is I really do believe in community. One of the big problems in the technology world is, right, everybody says these things, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know, which is actually not a step far enough. It's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. I can tell you from experience, the most important conversations that are going to occur are the ones that you will never know happen. Two people that actually can write very big checks are gonna be like, hey, were you talking to that person? I kind of like where their mindset was going, and I think they might be able to do good for whatever it is. And so that's where we have our stupid little games. So we have the game tonight that everybody played, right? Where tonight, the game was, you get a little monster sticker, you go find your fellow monster, and you go talk to somebody. And then you listen to what they have to say. And part of this is getting you folks used to talking with people. Because again, if you've worked in the tech world, oh my God. If you have ever seen two tech people not communicate, it is both hilarious and sad at the same time. I had two employees, and I used to beat them over the head about communication. And I had my assistant, and I had my field tech, and I saw them one day as they were ships shooting words at each other. And so we had a building, and so my guy goes in the back of the building, and I just stop him, and I'm like, okay, just tell me, what did Mia just tell you? And he looked at me, he's like, what do you mean? I saw you guys throw words at each other for 5 minutes. Just tell me what she said. Right? And so that's part of these stupid little community games, just so you understand what's going on there. Let's see here. Sponsors. I would like to thank our sponsors, but we don't have any. So if anybody wants to sponsor this type of thing, here, we'll take your money. I do want to thank Meet the Geeks. Steve's here with Meet the Geeks, and Chris is here with Meet the Geeks, and Dan is here with Meet the Geeks. The other Chris, there's so many Chris's in this place, is not here. But Meet the Geeks is a really good meetup just for like IT professionals. Everything from coders to ISPs, sysadmins. Basically, if you want to go and talk about something other than Node.js in the tech world, they're great. They do a get together every other month at this point. You get together, have some beer, and you just BS. So like, imagine this, only with beer and not me talking at you. That's basically what you get with Meet the Geeks. And then Hatch Co-working, I'm very thankful for. They're actually giving us this space. They're great. If you haven't seen Hatch Co-working, they're on either side of the hallway over here. It's like $200 a month for a flex desk if you're interested in working in Hatch. It's like $300 a month for permanent desks, blase. But they've got a great community. Every week they do a wine and cheese and that type of thing. Definitely, if you have the money for it, it's worth spending a couple $100 a month to be part of the community. Because again, this is all part of what they're helping with. Let's see here. Okay, so the big one, or the next one is people looking for work. People raise their hand. So here's the thing: if you are looking for a job, or even if you have a job and you're just looking for extra consulting work, because as I found out, that's an important one to know about too. Is anybody here looking for work? Raise your hand. Okay, now run up here. Run. Well, you're running. You're like. All right. So, oops. All right. Dun dun dun. Okay, so tonight for everybody, there is going to be a question and answer time. And people that have the microphone are going to be allowed to ask questions. And people who don't have the microphone are going to be told to get the microphone. Because we have recording going on, and so if you don't talk into the microphone, your voice doesn't get recorded, and so just talking to the microphone. So, we want your name and one sentence of what you're looking for, and then go down the line.
My name is Maggie. I'm basically new to this field, and I'm looking for a place to get started where I can learn from the ground up.
My name is Mikey, and the same is true for me. I actually just got into the industry within the last 9 months or so. I've been self-educating. I currently work in a help desk role, and I really just want a place to go and get some hands-on experience to supplement my education and figure out what I want to do, and I have a lot of drive and just ready to put the pedal to the metal.
Hello, my name is Alexander, and we are from the same crew. We go to Elias classes every Tuesday and socialize and code. And I'm looking for an entry-level cloud architect engineer position with some small or medium-sized IT consulting company.
Hello, my name is Michael Rosenberg. I'm offering fractional chief design officer services, helping people build minimum lovable products and go-to-market products that are human-friendly. You can go to humanfriendly.ai.
Hi, I'm Brian Jones. I'm a Node.js developer, actually. I felt targeted by what you said earlier, but yeah, I just want to get connected more to the ecosystem and get involved with startups and different levels of consulting.
Cool. So there you go. If you're looking to hire somebody, there are people. Okay, John Jones, are you ready? Dun, 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 dun. And Tomer, here we go. Okay, so basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a story in 3 parts. So, you know how it works? You hit the power button until it comes up. No, you hold it down until it comes up. There.
Hello.
There you go. So good on thing. I love these. The one thing I like about owning your own business is you get to buy toys. You get to be like, oh, I can write that off.
These are really comfortable.
I like them. So anyways, so this is going to be a story in 3 parts. So we're going to talk to John about where he currently is, so we understand what's going on with that. Then we're going to ask him how he got there. And then we're going to ask him how long till ChatGPT makes him homeless. So, yeah. Now, I know being in audiences like this, industry expertise, it can get really boring if we just sit here for 45 minutes and do that. So, between each of these stories, we will allow you to ask questions on that specific time frame. When we do the questions, I do request, because this is Asheville, that you actually ask questions, because sometimes people like to throw out a lot of advice, which is great. Find him later, drink a cup of coffee, give him all the advice you want to give. But like for here, just try to keep it to questions. If that all makes sense to everybody, let's dive in. Okay, John Jones. So the first question that everybody's really going to care about in the modern world, what is your daily driver? What is the primary computer you use to do whatever the hell it is that you do?
I'm a Mac guy. I've been a Mac guy for years and years. I think my computer now is a 19 MacBook Pro. Does everything I need. I can check my email and Facebook and stuff. It's really good. Zoom. I also do a lot of Zoom on that thing.
Do you not run into any problems? Because I was talking with somebody about this, and they really like Mac, but for like enterprise users or maybe like your clients, do you have to like ever spin up a virtual machine, or is Mac just good enough?
When we've done a lot of work in a lot of like highly regulated industries, so you run into corporate, right? Healthcare, banking, insurance, stuff like that. And yeah, we just spin up virtual machines, carry it around on a little disk, and everybody's happy enough. Yeah.
And the people in your office don't lose their minds with that damn, because I had a 2019, I just got rid of the damn thing. The keyboard, I wanted to throw the keyboard out the window.
Yeah, I've actually replaced the keyboard in my machine, I think, twice. Yeah, I like giving the more important people that actually use their computers to their full capacity, the nicer computers. So I'll stick with this one until it burns down.
Fair enough. Okay, then after that, the less important, what the hell is Anthroware? What do you guys do?
So at the end of the day, Anthroware, we build a lot of software. But software, anybody can build software, right? And it's hard, it has to be secure, it has to work. So it is a technical skill, but there's a lot of bad software out there. And there's a lot of smart people making it, so why is that? And what we decided early on when we first started the company is that we were going to just have this human component. That's why the company's called Anthropology is in the name, Anthroware. So we decided, okay, we're gonna have a design first approach. We're gonna study people. I have a background in hard science, so doing research and then having a hypothesis, getting some evidence or data, applying it back to your hypothesis, and then when you're wrong, changing that. The newest evidence has to change your current best thinking. You have to allow that to happen. So that was a part of the approach almost from day one. It's just like have a design forefront. Well, then we realized that we started talking ourselves out of a lot of business, and we would go to these like perfectly great sales opportunities and realize that what they're asking for is absolute garbage and it'll never work in a million years. And so I started talking them out of building the software, so essentially like losing the sale. And my business partner Jason was like, what you're really doing is, I think we should call that strategic consulting and we should charge for it. So Anthroware, we do a lot of strategy work. The products that we build have to fit into where, like, it has to actually do the thing that it's intended to do, which for a business is usually some kind of efficiency gain. You're going to implement this new huge digital transformation project, but you have to get something out of it. Maybe you can have more capacity. The same amount of people can do more, make more money for you. There has to be a direct connection to revenue. Doing that, you have to get the people at the boots on the ground that are actually using the software. You have to solve problems for them. If you solve problems for them on those little microcycles, those little everyday tasks, then you get the next level benefit. The cycle gets a little bigger, right? But the business gets a benefit. Then as you're collecting data and you're collecting all this stuff from the end users, and now you're tracking an ROI, then you can think about where you want to go in the future, which is an even bigger cycle. So we call that bottom-up value creation. So I'll answer your question finally. Anthroware does a lot of strategy. We do a lot of design, and we build software. And research is the steel thread that runs through all that. We're really good at research.
So then, what do your employees look like? So you're saying you do that type of work. Are you the one that does that and then just hands everything off to code monkeys? Or like, who are you hiring for this company?
So we hire, strategists that we would call, I guess, the slang term would be consultants, even though some people hate the consultant word. So we have business consultants that are going to be, really running projects, and they've got the 30,000 foot view. They've got to make sense of the inputs that our researchers, our designers, our engineers are giving them, and say, okay, we can also apply this to a business model. And oftentimes they're actually helping our clients with the business model. It's like, we don't innovate technology that much these days. That barrier is really high. I think we've seen that with all the large language model stuff. It's really high to build a moat around your product or idea because of technical innovation. So we end up innovating business model and design. So that consultant is weaving all those pieces together. It's a pretty nuanced job, and saying, okay, we can build something that will actually move the needle for this company. And then we have, as you might imagine, user experience designers that are adept at doing product research, asking a lot of questions that are not leading, and that can go deeper and deeper. And then we have a lot of engineers here, and we've got engineers in Curitiba, Brazil. So we have our lead engineers here in the States, and we've got about 8 or 10 guys in Curitiba that we love working with.
So I guess that's an interesting question with the modern world then. Are your engineers the ones that are actually the most valuable for your company? Because I remember I ran into a CTO a few years ago, and he worked for an accounting company. And what he found out was geeks and coders just could not figure out accounting and save their damn life. But you teach accountants SQL, and they can figure out it in a day. And so they were going out and hiring MBAs and teaching them SQL and having a much better success rate. So like with what you're doing, are the developers still actually as valuable as they used to be?
Well, I think each part is exceptionally valuable. You can't pull one part out and have the thing work. So if I said, I'm just going to hire developers from anywhere and play that game, which I think is a losing game, then I'll focus on the product design side. Well, I lose a lot of control over, or I say the company. We lose a lot of control from a project around sort of the main pieces of. Let me back up. I can control our process. I know that we have a repeatable process to build products that are better than building these products without a process. So the engineering piece, the engineers collaborate at every stage with our designers and our researchers to understand that what we're designing and putting in front of them and asking them to do, we know how feasible that is. We know if we're asking them for something that they know how to do, and we can roughly put a timeline on it, or if it's something where it requires a little bit of innovation and God forbid invention. We don't really do that. And so we're able to understand the feasibility of what we're asking them to do, and that whole dance has to happen at the same time. So engineers are super valuable. Engineers that are willing to raise their hand and tell you that something is wrong with your plan, that have the kind of confidence to really speak into that, are even more valuable. I think that our director of engineering, Harrison, a few months into his career at Anthroware, he calls me up and he was like, hey, you asked a question in our leadership meeting. I didn't want to step on anybody's toes, but I feel compelled to tell you, what I think about it. And it was a design question about a design. And he didn't think that it was his place in front of the director of design or in front of the consultants to speak into this design issue. And I got all over his case. I was like, Harrison, this is exactly why you're in the room. You bring this perspective in because we're trying to make the best thing. There's one of our core values is around humility. Well, humility is around being able to kill your darlings, right? You have this great idea of how something should be. You might even get pretty attached to it. Everybody's had their pet projects before. And being willing to get some other type of input from either an expert or maybe some quantitative data, some qualitative data, like whatever those data sources are, that changes what you actually need to do in order to complete the job, that's pretty important. So if we don't have Harrison's voice in the room in that project, we would have probably would have wasted 2 or 3 months of work. So yeah, I hope I'm answering your question. Engineers are super important, yeah.
And so with your company, so you were talking about you have contractors in Brazil. So what does your company look like? Employees, contractors, does it scale up and down massively or a little bit, depending on the time of year?
So we're a professional services firm, which means that we've got to go either hunt for new work, new clients, or we kind of farm the clients that we have. So the professional services model is different than a product model. A product company, you're growing based on a product roadmap, maybe some, obviously revenue, investors. You're building things at a specific sort of timeline if you can. I know there's a lot of ups and downs. I'm generalizing. With professional services, we have a lot of different bosses. We've got every client is a new boss, and they're buying our process. They're buying us because we're a wisdom firm. We've been there, done that. We can talk about that more if you want. But the workload does fluctuate. And if we land a big project, having contractors available that we trust to help us, get some extra horsepower, that's great. But they have to know exactly what they're building. And in order to do that, we have to have a really good process and handle for how we're designing projects, how we're going out and figuring out what needs to be done, which I think is probably the really difficult part when you think about product market fit, or you think about building something that actually solves their problem that they're going to want to use. That cracking that nut is very difficult. So we've kept all that in-house in terms of what we're actually building, and we're using our contractors in Brazil to give us horsepower to go up and down on the build phase.
So about how many employees do you have then?
Right now we've got 12 full-timers, including myself. We've got another half a dozen contractors in the US, and then the 8 or 10 guys in Brazil. Yeah.
That's cool. So when you deal with the contractors, especially foreign contractors, do you contract folks individually, or do you go for like a contracting company?
You can do both. If you contract folks individually, there's a little more things you have to think about. Most of those things are legal. There are companies out there like Ramp that make that easy. We have not gone that route, although we're considering that for a couple of specific projects, specific reasons, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Especially like if you think about hiring somebody in a country that is like getting paid in US dollars is really going to make a huge impact in their life. I think that's pretty cool. Smart people are everywhere. We don't have a monopoly on that here in the States. So you can hire, I would recommend if you're going to do that, looking at companies like Ramp that take the legal part, the liability on as a middleman there. But with the company in Brazil, we're contracting a company that has a U.S. entity in Florida. And so we pay them a little bit of markup, but they're the ones that are keeping those folks engaged. So they've got an awesome company culture. They have an identity, in that company. They're making this home and this place for them. So we're not worried about the one lone guy down in Brazil that, is sitting in his bedroom all day coding, getting burnt out because he doesn't have any friends. So it's a really good relationship that we've got.
So why, I think you're the first person I've heard outsourcing to Brazil. Like you hear about actually Ukraine or India or all that. Where did Brazil come from?
Brazil is, it's less expensive, but it's more expensive than, I think Ukraine would be definitely more expensive than India. There's only a 2-hour time difference maximum. So we're able to get, and everybody speaks really good English. The universities are great. Their population's growing. Their government's, it's okay, stable-wise. But it's been a really good experience so far. Yeah.
And so, so in this modern world, and especially post-COVID, like with remote work, because when I first met you, you had a really nice office over there. Like it was all pretty. It was like one of those pretty startup offices, and it's now gone. How have you found remote work, and do you think remote work really is the future?
Oh man, I miss hanging out with people in an office. When the COVID pandemic hit, we were one of the first companies to send everybody home because our culture, we already have this culture of like ultimate flexibility. If you need to go to your kids' play at 10 a.m., you don't have to ask anybody. You don't have to ask for time off. We trust people to get their work done. And so that transition, I'm not going to say it was easy for us, but it wasn't that big of a deal. We just said, all right, we don't know what this thing's going to be like. We don't know anything about it. Why not take a preemptive strike? We send everybody home. And based on how individuals felt in the company, some people didn't want to be around anybody. Some people did, and we left that as an option, but nobody came to the office. We had Zach coming to water the plants. That was about it. I would show up, and our director would be like over on one side of the building wearing a mask, and it's a pretty big office for 1 or 2 people to be in. So once the pandemic subsided, we were like, all right, we can go back to the office. What do you guys want to do? It's like, yeah, let's go back. We miss each other. We're going to get back together. And nobody went back to the office. And then I said, okay, well, this costs money, guys. So, if you can show me, 2 days a week that we've got a critical mass of people in the office, like, yeah, it's going to be awesome. First day, there's like 10 people there. Felt great. Everybody's like hugging and laughing, and just feel like you get that same energy that you miss. So it's back. And then the very next day, it was me and one other person. So we shut the office down, and I think the important thing is like our team loves being around each other. They genuinely care about each other. We have fond memories of that, but we had already transitioned to a remote first company. Going through that transition back would have been yet another set of growing pains, and it just wasn't worth it. Most people, although they love being around each other, like being home so they can spend more time with their kids or their dog or whatever. So I think it's working really well for us, but you have to be really, really intentional about how you build those relationships now that you're not in the same room. So taking the first 5 minutes of the call to be like, hey, Eli, man, like, how was your weekend? Like, what are you, do you figure out that thing that was going on, or whatever. Being more intentional about those conversations. We have a few people that have a hard time kind of turning it off, and so the team encouraging them to be like, hey, you're looking kind of rough, man. You get on your mountain bike or something, Making sure that we're like taking care of each other that way. Anthroware is turning 10 here in a few weeks, so we're flying everybody in. And we're going to have a big party and just be intentional about those kind of things. So I think at the end of the day, as much time as we're spending on having those sort of collisions that we were having in the office, online, and then it's certainly like bringing people together, traveling different places to be around each other. I don't know that we're going to save a ton of money not having an office, but the part that's really important to me, and I think and really important to the team, is that the culture stay good. And I'm like very proud of our culture.
So I think with that, one of the interesting things with remote work, everybody's like, wow, it's a new world of remote work. And it's like, we've had telecommuting for 20 years. It's very weird. Like, they've changed the name of it, and now it's like, it's this new thing. And like, no, we've been doing it for a long damn time. But one of the interesting things was they actually did research like 10 years ago on this. And it's funny with Elon Musk saying, if you don't want to work, then fine. But they actually found out the bigger problem was actually burnout. That what you were saying is many employees actually don't know when to stop. And not only do they not know when to stop, but they start sending emails at 7 o'clock so that other employees start thinking, well, crap, I need to send an email at 7 o'clock. And all of a sudden you start having these employees do a whole, like they're working all the way to midnight just because they think they have to. Are you running into that problem? And like I think about like being an MCSE, we used to have tools that would literally just shut your damn email off. Like we were like, we know legally you can only work 40 hours a week. So at 5 o'clock at night, your email like no longer works. Do you have systems in place for that kind of thing? Are you running into any issues?
We don't have big issues with that. A lot of the folks that have a career at Anthroware see just all the time in our core values, our purpose statement, the trainings that we do every 2 weeks for the team, we're constantly talking about the culture that we want to build, which is an example of not that. So that, I think the reinforcement constantly around our purpose, our core values, those are the rules of engagement. And then, you know, I take it on myself to model this from the top to make sure that I go, you know, at 3 o'clock and go ride my bike a couple times a week so that they know that it's okay. No, just kidding. I'm not really kidding. I ride my bike a lot. But you know, I think those core values and the purpose statement, like the first line of our purpose statement is, you know, create a great place to work. You know, the second line is create opportunities to share them with the team, grow leaders, create wealth, share it with the team. You know, like those kind of things. If you're hearing that over and over again, every 2 weeks we do a presentation for an hour, whole company. Somebody in the company gives a presentation. Nobody's immune to this. The lowest person on the totem pole up to me. And when we teach those things, you get extra points if you bring in a core value or something from the purpose statement or mission statement, and you relate it back. So those rules of engagement tell people what the norms are for how they should be working. If we had a culture of you have to work until the project's done, I don't care if it's midnight, that, you know, churn and burn, you know, you're going to work here for 18 months and then you're going to want to leave because, you know, it's great for your resume, but who would want to work in an environment like that? Those companies model those and how they act about their vision and their purpose and all that kind of stuff. That is modeled behavior. So we've just chosen not to model that. And that there's no difference. Remote or in person, you would have to be just as intentional about modeling your core values in either scenario, I think.
And then one of the things I wonder with remote work, especially with my students and all that, like I feel like once you get to a certain level, you've done 3, 5, 10 years, and you're told to do remote work. Like you know you may get lazy, you may procrastinate, but you know what you're supposed to do. What do you think about the next generation of techs going into this remote work world where I know having a manager look over your shoulder sucks, but I don't know, at least it was valuable for me for a while. Like, do you disagree with that? Or what do you think what's gonna happen with the next generation?
Well, Anthroware is a very small boutique professional services firm that has a pretty strong handle on who's doing what and when. If you're not pulling your weight, everybody knows. When we were in our office and we hired somebody brand new that's never been in the industry, maybe didn't have corporate experience, that sort of ingrains some of that professionalism into you, and you see that too. People showing up to an important meeting without anything to write on, just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. You know, it's like, no, you need to write down, take notes. There's some of those little behaviors that are so ingrained into me the way that you follow up on, hey, this is what I heard you say, this is what we're going to do, here's some next steps, here's my takeaways. Those things ultimately have to be taught. You can't expect somebody to just know how to do all that stuff, whether it's remote or not. So I think for the people that are kind of just getting into this type of job, figure out what those expectations and norms are by asking questions. Somebody will teach you that. And, or look for a company where that's part of the package. They want to invest in you and see you become better. So I love this topic because I think there's a ton of people that don't think that entry-level jobs actually exist because of all the crap that we have online. It's like, here's an entry-level job. It requires 7 years of experience doing this thing. It's only been around for 2 years, but who's counting? So entry-level jobs do exist, and the expectations should match those jobs. And the expectations that we have at an associate level, which is our first level, we have associate, specialist, senior, principal, and partner. And at an associate level, there's a couple things. Number one, we expect you to be a sponge. You got to learn. Because the seniors and principals and partners, part of their job to be at that level is to teach you. So you have to be a sponge. So if anybody in the company sees you show up without a pen and paper, it's like, yeah, you really want to, are you going to be able to remember all this stuff without doing it? This is going to help, Their job is to take that teaching moment and teach you. It's part of being a senior, being a principal. As you move up, I guess the second thing is when we hire somebody as an associate, if we can't see you as a future senior, or if we can't see you growing and exceeding past where you are, we won't hire you. So that's a pretty good filter for us in terms of people that show up, they're hungry, you can tell when somebody just wants to learn, be a sponge. And then just knowing that the way that we have defined each one of those levels, which are extremely well defined for a company our size, that's another thing I'm very proud of. And that's actually what we teach every 2 weeks is we're teaching you how to move up the career ladder. It's not good enough for me to say, here's the expectations as a senior. I want to pull you there like a tractor beam. Because the more we can imprint the process that works, our core values, the more successful the company is. If we weren't investing in our people, even at the lowest level in the company, it'd be like keying my own car, right? It's just that's not what we're going to do. So, I don't know, that was a rant more than anything.
There we go. That rant works, rant works. We're here to listen to what you have to say. Okay, so then let's start talking about your clients then. When you're looking at your clients, what kind of clients do you have? And more importantly, what size your clients? Are you taking $1,000 jobs or $500,000 jobs? What does this look like?
Oh, it depends on the project. So we work on two halves of this, right? So we have the product side, and again, research being the steel thread through the whole thing. We realize that because we're good at research, we're actually really good at competitive intelligence. Why you win or lose deals, why your customers start to shop and maybe churn. It's a lot less expensive to keep an existing customer happy, and your sell-in rate to upsell or cross-sell an existing customer is 60%, whereas closing a brand new deal is 25 times less than that. So the idea is that we apply that same research on the competitive intelligence side, and we're giving information for sales and marketing. We ran into an issue with one of our customers where their sales team wasn't speaking clearly enough about their R&D roadmap. And they were like, yeah, well, your customer, we went with them because they were doing all this R&D and it was this very concrete thing, and they showed us exactly what they were investing in, and we really wanted to buy a company that was investing in their technology. That was a perception issue that they just needed to fix with their sales team. This is a quick all right, sales guys, here's what's happening whenever you tell this message. We want you to be really concrete about how much we're investing in the R&D pipeline. They started winning more deals almost overnight. When you get feedback in those processes or in those interviews that are more product oriented, well, now you've got to prioritize that. If I build this feature, will I unlock a little bit more of my market? In other words, like, let's say I do this big integration with HubSpot or something like that. Well, all the people that said no before because you didn't have a integration with HubSpot are now able to say yes. Whether they will or not is not for sure. So that goes into a product bucket. That's a longer cycle because then you have to build it. So for those type of engagements are the low end. I mean, it's probably like an 80 to 150,000 a year kind of deal. For the product side, the smallest job that we took last year was like 175. So we go up to, you know, multi-million, multi-year projects, which is more the sweet spot. We like to sink our teeth in a little bit. The clients themselves, this is an important framework for products, and it's a really important framework for professional services too. There are 4 types of problems. You've got latent problems, which means you don't know you have a problem until I tell you. People don't usually spend money on that. They do sometimes, but it's rare. You've got passive problems where you know you got a problem, but it's not a big enough problem. It's not costing you enough money that you're actually going to buy something to fix it. You've got vision problems where you know exactly what this is costing you. It's costing you an arm and a leg. You have to fix the problem or you're going to die. And you think you know how to fix it. And then there's an active problem where all those things are true, but you don't know how to fix it. It's costing you a lot of money. You might have even calculated exactly how much money this is costing me. You need you don't just need a painkiller. You're bleeding out. You need a tourniquet and morphine at this point, right? Those types of problems, the active problems, are the problems that we go for. If you already think you know how to fix it and we're not part of that solution phase, we don't get to do research. We don't get to do like a real user experience, process. And you're just at the end of the day going to expect us to build what you want us to build. Then you should hire a software company, not Anthroware. Anthroware is a product company. So we don't sell into those companies. We've made that mistake a couple times and the relationships weren't good. You kind of have to know your sweet spot. We know that by trial and error. We go for those active problems. They know they have a problem, they know it's costing them a lot of money, but they don't know how to fix it. So we come in because we've solved those type of problems before. We become an expert in the problem. We start thinking about solutions and we start putting those solutions back in front of people, what's working, what's not working, and then we narrow in and converge into something that's actually going to work. That level of engagement is it's just more expensive than, here, pour some concrete. We're the architect and builder, I guess.
So with that, like one of the things it's interesting for me being around the coding and the development world is when you're in IT, I guess it was called the Waterfall project management style. We just built crap, right? But the idea was you go out there, you talk to the users, you figure out what the people need, you figure out the resources, you install a whole bunch of stuff. And it's not that the client doesn't need some services after it's installed, but the idea is they just spend a crap ton of money and from here on out, they pay you a couple of $1,000s a month and that's it. I've noticed a lot of development companies, like they laugh at the idea of their clients ever leaving. Like I guess under this agile concept where you're always building, you're always creating, there's never really a finished product. And the thought that the client is ever going to get rid of the development company is literally laughable. Like, do your clients ever get rid of it? Like, is there ever a time when your clients are actually done? Pretty much.
Yeah, but you have to know whether it's a strategic engagement or a tactical engagement. So if you know right off the bat that I'm going to build this for them, and then they're going to hand it over to their engineers, and they're going to support it from there, and that's it. That we have a skill set that they don't, or they're busy, and we've got capacity, whatever it is. But you have to know that that's a tactical engagement up front. And then you decide, all right, Is the money good enough? You know, do I have capacity? Working on a project is better than not working on a project. You can make a good decision about whether or not to take that. You want more strategic engagements than tactical engagements. Otherwise, you're always hunting for work. Professional services, like the golden ratio, I think, is about 70% farming. But your revenue for the next year comes from about 70% of your existing clients, and you have to go out and hunt about 30%. The hunting and farming thing, you guys get that, right? Like, if I'm going to go hunt, I don't want to offend anybody, but people do hunt. But if I'm going to go hunt, I have to go out to where the animals are. I have to hike into the woods. I have to, search for them. And then if I shoot something, I got to clean it and haul it back to my car, and like all this. It's harder, right? If I've got a farm, I can just put a bucket of corn out and set up a tree stand and wait. So farming is easier. That's that analogy. I think you have to know whether or not it's strategic or not. Prioritization, right? Like, if you're doing a really good job with product development, your roadmap doesn't look like, pure, in my opinion, it's not just pure Agile and it's not pure Waterfall. But the fact that we can run so many tests with design tools now, it's so much cheaper to move pixels around on a page or in a clickable prototype, so much cheaper than actually building something. You can get 95% of your learning done in the design phase with design tools. And then you know exactly what you need to build for that smaller phase of work, and you can burn it down almost like a waterfall, right? And guess who's less frustrated? Your entire team, because they know what they're building. And then as you're burning down that phase, you can start experimenting and figuring out what you're going to build for the next phase during the design process. So I think that like the most modern kind of way to develop things is to fit as much as the experiments as you can moving pixels around.
And so with your clients, and like, how does the client acquisition process work? How do you get new clients for you?
I would say thus far, we have built our book of business mainly on reputation and referrals. Getting to, what we're working on now is having that become an inbound process. I can't sit up here and say that we have that figured out. We get a few inbound leads, and a few of those are high quality. So, our efforts there are working. But a lot of times people have heard about us. The last sales call that I was on was a company that we were at a conference a few weeks ago, when that massive 1,000-year storm hit Miami, Florida. I was in a resort, didn't step outside the entire time. There were cars floating down the street in front of the resort on the last day. It rained 25 inches in 6 hours. After 4 days of rain. Really great conference. No, I'm serious, it was great. Like our client, it was their conference and their culture is amazing, right? And so we were invited to speak about this big platform that we're building because it's such a huge change management deal for them. Their whole company's gonna adopt it. So we give this presentation and one of their other vendors saw the presentation and just liked what they saw. And they asked our client about how it is working with Anthroware, and they just gave us the most rave review. And then that's why they walked up and said, hey, we want to talk to you. So I think, above anything else, that reputation piece and just doing a damn good job, is probably, for our type of work, that's the thing that matters most. Clients too, like from a reputation standpoint, and I think this is with anything, it's with products, it's with services, your customers will always forgive little hiccups in delivery if you treat that right. In fact, sometimes those are actually times where you can get even higher trust because you do the right thing when those things happen. Always happens. Stuff like that happens. They won't forgive failures in account management. How you treat your clients, how you treat your customers, not making mistakes there, over communicating. You know, we've got a whole list of things for our consultants. The very first thing on the list is, be one step ahead. So that account management piece, whether you've got a product that you're building as an entrepreneur or you've got a professional services firm, remember that people will forgive little hiccups in delivery. They will never forgive major mistakes in account management.
So then, with your clients and all that, like, what does your tech stack look like, or do you have a defined tech stack? So if you're doing app development or whatever else, do you use Flutter, React, Python, whatever? Like, what does that look like?
For app builds, we love Flutter. Flutter's awesome. I don't know if you were throwing shade on Node earlier, but
No. The only thing, no, it's not. I do not throw shade on Node. I throw shade on Node developers because they are the meanest IT. I've been doing tech since '96, and I have never in my life met Node developer. It's just like, what the hell? Like,
he's nice. Look at him.
no, like the only times I've ever been like browbeat in my life has been like with Node developers, where I'm just like getting beat on. I'm just like, I just want to have a beer, dude. Like, stop.
Okay. I think that probably goes back to the culture thing, right? Especially when I'll answer your SAT question in a second. When you're a professional services company, you often go in and you're interacting with other teams, and they've already got their territory staked out. And IT people can be a little bit territorial, I would say, as a general statement. As the hired guns, you have to be the complete opposite of that. You have to lower people's guard and say, like, we're here to help you, not hurt you. We're not here to stake a claim or take anything away from you. We're here to collaborate. It goes back to that humility thing. So that's a big deal. So even though it's Node, I think that we do a pretty good job, lowering those barriers. Back end, yeah, mostly Node. Most of the front end web projects we draw are drawn in React, right? Like, we're actually building our own framework on top of React for us so that we can just be faster. So imagine you've got a, $2-3 million a year problem. You're just like hemorrhaging money, and you talk to an app company and it's like, yeah, we can fix this. It's going to take 2 years to build. Or you talk to Anthroware and we're like, yeah, we can build this in a year. Like, that's a big deal. Doesn't mean it's going to be cheaper. In fact, I might actually charge more for that. We're faster and it's high quality. But we're building these tools to make, for specifically what we do, to make ourselves faster. Mostly relational databases. If you get into the GraphDB, like DocumentDB, that kind of stuff, there's really cool things you can do with it. Most of our clients, reporting is a big issue, and you've got to go around your elbow to get to your ass to get reporting on a graph. I'm sorry. Like, that is not one of the strong points. So, yeah, does that answer your question on Stack? Yeah. Cool, because I had to memorize all that. The only thing I've written in the last 10 years is email. So.
Okay, fair enough. So how long has Node actually been out for?
Yeah, you're asking the wrong guy. Okay, never mind. Ask Brian. Yeah.
Fair enough. Never mind. Moving on. Okay, so one of the big things, I went to your website, and you said win-loss like 1,000 times. So, like, what is win-loss industry?
Win-loss is on the competitive intelligence side. So that is like a pure research project where we go in and we connect to a company's whatever CRM they're using, and we're like, all right, incentivize your closed-won, closed-loss deals to talk to us. We talk to the stakeholders and we say, okay, what are your learning objectives here? What are the big things that this competitor is eating our lunch every time. Every time it's between these three, we lose to, competitor C. And so we build some hypothesis, we build some learning objectives with the stakeholders, and then we'll run one-on-one interviews with their closed-won, closed-loss deals and dig really deep into why customers chose the other person or chose them. So they get to understand what they're doing well and double down on that, and then they get to understand what maybe other salespeople are saying about them, what kind of FUD they're throwing, that kind of thing. And we try to keep those programs to around a head count a year, like the cost of hiring a person, but they get so much more out of that. Churn is really similar. It's the same muscle applied to a different thing. And then the output of those studies are, the product side, the product person is going to want different outputs than the marketing person. They're going to want different outputs than the salesperson, right? So the reports that we give quarterly are both a general sort of like this is why you're losing deals. These are the things you need to change, but also really specific to the people that are in the room. And usually, when we give those reports, well, first of all, when we sell those there's a few competitors out there. When we sell that type of work, we're like, well, what are you getting out of it now? And they're like, it kind of validates what we already know. And we say, okay, well, we've been doing product for 10 years. We know how to ask these really deep questions. Give us a shot. When we give our first report, that after the first quarter, almost every time, these executives are like fighting at each other. And what I've realized is, for our ideal customer there, when you go in and you ask the question like, all right, do you guys really want to know what's gumming up the system? Or are you good just like validating what you already know? Because we're really good at uncovering the hard facts. And if you don't want to hear them, like now's the time to say so. You should hire somebody else. And we'll either get people telling us to like, get that out of the office, or we'll say like, no, we'll see teams that like, we really want to know the hard facts. We want to face the hard facts and move on. Generally, somebody in there is really comfortable when they tell us to get out. They've already got the 2.2 kids and the house and the dog and the career and all this stuff. They don't want to know what's going on. They just want to keep doing what's doing. I'm probably pissing a lot of people off right now, but those are not our customers. Our customers are the people that want to face the hard facts. So that, like, really long answer to win-loss, but it is an incredibly fascinating space where we've been really competitive as a really tiny firm going up against the top 3 firms in the country every deal because we're really good at research. Same muscles that we've been developing with product development, but applied on the other side. And the interesting thing about that from our business perspective, it is like, as you think about your businesses, like this is an interesting thing to think about too. R&D projects sometimes the funding gets a little wonky depending on, macroeconomic things. With something on the other side of that equation, right? Like you're building a product and then there's like a dotted line. It's like, oh, I launched the product. Now you care about things like sales, revenue, churn, those kind of things, growth. Having a foot planted in that side of the equation is nice because programs that have a direct connection to revenue don't really get defunded. So if you can make a really direct connection to revenue, businesses tend to like that.
Okay, so the final question is part of this chapter. So Tomer, get ready. Start thinking of a couple of questions. So any tools or services you really like, especially in this remote work world? Like some people fall in love with Zoom or Teams or, I don't know. Not too, okay.
I've heard people say they've fallen in love with Teams, but I haven't met somebody that's willing to say that to my face. It's like I haven't met anybody from North Dakota either, so I'm like wondering whether or not that's a real place.
Can I get one great feature of Teams? It's awful, but it does work with Blur and Firefox. So if you want to use Firefox, you can blur your background. Google Video will not allow you to do that. Zoom you can't use in the browser. Teams in Firefox allows you to blur your background. That's the one good feature I found.
Okay.
It's a huge feature.
I don't have a real good answer for you, Eli. I think probably the Giphy or Jiffy, however you want to say it, feature in Slack is probably my favorite tool.
Okay. Well then, cool. Okay, so that is the end of the first chapter. Where is John Jones now? So, does anybody have questions? We can do a couple of questions.
We were just talking about.
Wait for the microphone. We have rules.
Sorry, we're recording. Quick question. You mentioned closed loss and doing research with those type of deals. How do you get closed loss people on the phone after you've, as a company, lost them? Money.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, money. I mean,
I just wanted to validate.
As soon as they decide either closed won or closed lost, and closed lost, you're right. It's a little bit harder to get those folks on the phone. With the only people that buy that are enterprise sales. These are big SaaS companies that have big contract values. It's not worth it to spend that much money. To my knowledge, we haven't been able to sell win-loss to organizations that aren't doing high-touch enterprise sales for big contract amounts. So salespeople and buyers have a different relationship than salespeople and literally anybody else in the world. And you do build a little bit of a relationship with your salespeople, and you kind of feel bad at the end of the day about telling them no. Like, I like you. I don't want to disappoint you. I got to go with this other guy, but I'm going to give you the courtesy of a call. Hey man, would you be willing to talk? We've got a third-party researcher. You know, would you be willing to talk to him? And maybe there's like a $50 Amazon card or something in there too. Not everybody says yes, but a lot of these companies, their deal flow is such that we can get a few. And usually we're only doing 10 interviews a month, 5 won, 5 lost, and then we're drilling into. We do up to 20. That's about the most we'll do. But then you see, like, I think this might be a pattern. Then you can apply a survey, like more quantitative type analysis tool to see whether or not you're actually onto something. So it's not a lot of interviews in the first place, but it's usually some kind of little incentive. But also, I think that people are people, right? So if I've talked to you 10 times and we've even done some sales engineering type work, then you're going to give me the courtesy of 30 minutes.
I think the key is to ask for that. It sounds like right away, as opposed to 3 months later. Hey,
Microphone.
Sorry, I messed up the microphone. I guess the key to that, and the insight I didn't think about was like doing it right away, as opposed to, or does it matter?
That works, but also like if you survey your whole, the whole Rolodex of people, and you get a survey, and a lot of the last questions are just really enticing. Like, we deeply want your opinion. We'll give you $50. Would you talk to a researcher? We'll get a few that way too. But yeah, it's generally, we attach into their process, and you're trying to get them, right there at the decision.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks. What were you doing right before Anthroware, and what were the first couple of years like?
Wait. That is the next chapter.
Oh, okay.
We do this is the current chapter, then we go into the before times.
All right.
But
Thank you, Michael. Michael, right? Yeah. Cool sticker.
What are some of your best differentiating questions in interviews to get the people that you want to be sponges and really learn, and they're not just interviewing in that way?
Wow, that's a great question. When we put a job rec out there, the last one for a entry-level product consultant, I think we had like 400 and some applicants in 2.5 days. And so the first part of the process is I take the first half of those and just delete them. Because I don't want to hire anybody unlucky. That's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke.
For anybody at home, if you think I'm bad.
That was a joke. So you look at the responses and I try to see who robo applied. Like, did you just hit the easy button and apply? And then I take out all the people that lied about their qualifications. Like somebody in the company does that. So that number immediately gets down 30%. Like it's just people that didn't put in any work whatsoever to apply. And then we'll look at the resumes with an astounding amount of detail because we're small. We don't have any of these like softwares that just, it's not as much of a numbers game with us. If we get 400 applicants, we generally look at 400 applicants. And for the people, we might get down to 80 or 100 that have relevant skill sets that we really like or that, something stands out. And then for those people, usually LinkedIn is how we have been recruiting, have had luck recruiting lately. We'll ask a question that's something like, why are you interested in Anthroware? And most people won't respond, and we don't talk to those people because they didn't respond. And then many of the other people will respond with their skills and what they want to do, their career, them. Which is sort of antithetical to the core values and the culture of the company already. But also it means that they didn't look at Anthroware and see something compelling. They just saw a job that kind of matched their skill set. So a few of those people will then answer with a well thought out message that says, I really like the way that you approach design problems. You seem like you have, like I read this blog and this part of your culture resonated with me. Or something like that. Those people go to the top of the list. Already at that point, if I just hired some of those people, they would want to be a sponge because they've done the research to try to figure out whether or not the company was a good fit and whether or not they could be successful there. So it comes out in the interview process, I think, in a sense, without asking. Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you for your question.
Let's do one more question. Well, two more questions.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for being here.
Can you contrast your most successful client and your least successful from your perspective, where you did really well and where you did really bad?
I mean, I could. I'm in a really good mood right now, though. We've had many amazing clients. And, when you look at, like any company with any kind of maturity has developed some kind of ideal client profile. We actually have that as a scorecard. And it has like 10 or 11 things to it. One of the things that is weighted the heaviest is whether or not there's something in their mission statement that resonates with us. And there's something in our mission statement or purpose statement that resonates with them. So it's like a core value alignment. They care a lot about their people, how they treat their clients, their teammates. That's pretty indicative of how they'll treat us. Because we know from our culture, we know how we're going to treat them. So that's one of the biggest in terms of does the client match? If all those other things are checked, it's the complexity of the project, they're hiring us to be a wisdom firm, it's an active problem, there's strategic potential, all those things that we could check the boxes for. If all those are checked and they treat people like garbage, we probably won't work for them. We've said no to a lot of work over the years. And You asked about bad clients. Bad clients were when we've said yes to work that didn't fit that ideal client profile, straight up. We made a mistake. It wasn't a good fit from the beginning, and we decided to do it anyway. And we might have had our reasons to do that, but they weren't good enough.
Why did you initially say yes to that client?
Well, some of it could be inexperience. You know, some of the bad decisions we made about clients were early on. Sometimes, like, maybe the economy's bad and you've got work, and it would be irresponsible not to take it. Sometimes you just don't see it until it's too late. So, you know, generally I would all chalk it up to mistakes on my end. I'm serious. Like who else is responsible for doing that? But I said yes. And the times that we knew about it beforehand, I could have been a little bit more convicted about my approach. So, and when it's not a good fit, man, it's not a good fit. Any customer, you do professional services, you get a client that's not a good fit, it's miserable. It's terrible. And it's miserable for them too. Nobody wins. Yep.
So we have one more question. Then we will go to the second chapter, the beginning, right behind you.
He actually asked one part of my question, which is, well, maybe a different way. Is there one client or product that you would say launched Anthroware? And the second part is, if there was one client or product that you would just absolutely love to either work with or build, what would that be?
The first question about if there's one thing that just launched Anthroware, man, when we started Anthroware, we had 4 proposals out, and we won all 4 of them. One of them was about $100,000. It was by far the biggest of the 4, and we thought it was a huge contract. And that allowed our first employee, he quit his job before I quit my full-time job. So we'll probably get into this in the next chapter. But winning all 4 of those is really what got us started. What would I love to work on? Hard problems. I mean, top 1% problems, things that actually matter. Pick one, you know. Something that makes the world a better place that's really hard to solve. I work on any of them. Yeah.
Okay, now we go to chapter 2, how it all began. So, in the beginning, like, it's interesting for folks of my generation, because everybody says, oh, when you're a kid, did you want to do this? And I was like, this crap didn't exist when I was a kid. Like, for you, did you want to go into technology? Did you know this was the path, more or less, that you want to go down? Or were you going in a different direction and kind of like me, got a job or whatever and pushed you into tech?
Oh, man. This is the embarrassing part where everybody realizes that I'm a quitter. But I didn't think I was going to be doing this. And in high school, I was really good at science and math. And I have awesome parents. Like, they're amazing. But there was a lot of pressure to go into science and math because I was good at it. And, or law. My dad was a lawyer and hated law, so that wasn't an option. And my dad, he flunked out of Virginia Tech engineering school. So I thought that would be pretty cool. So stupid. So anyway, I didn't get into Virginia Tech. It was the only school I didn't get into. And so I kind of decided that I wanted to do international business, and I didn't know what that meant. But that's what I started studying in college, was international business. And my first week of college, and I signed up for all the business classes, and I really enjoyed, like, legitimately enjoyed some of that. Like macro economics is just fascinating to me. First week of school, I walk into my intermediate Spanish class where I'm going to be learning how to be an international businessman because you have to speak international languages. And the lady was like, "This is the last words you'll hear me say in English." And I said, "Nope." Walked into so that's like, I don't know, the third thing I quit at that time. Walked into the advisor's office and said, "Okay, what do you have instead of intermediate Spanish?" So I traded 3 hours of intermediate Spanish for 5 hours of physics plus a 3-hour calc-based physics plus a 3-hour lab, and I had like the most amazing professor you could possibly imagine, Dr. Brian Reichel. And I just went all in. And like the things that I go all in with, I go all in for decades. Just, except the things that I quit. Physics being one. Actually, I ended up with a master's degree in physics, so I quit from the standpoint that I didn't get a PhD, which also my dad he had a master's degree, but he didn't have a PhD, and I thought that would be cool. But anyway, like I ended up deciding that I wanted to be a scientist, okay? And there's a concept of skill stack, just like there's a tech stack. And I'm not sure who came up with this, it was not me, but the concept is, like, if you really want to be best in the world at something, it's really hard. To be like top 10% or 5% at something, that's really tough to do. And so I could walk into a physics test. There's some hard ones. And I'd studied for, maybe a week, days, at least, and that took all the time. Give me all the time. I'll take all the time. And then, Brian Meyer comes in and aces the test in like 30 minutes and walks out, or some of these other smart guys. And I realized, like, man, I'm just okay at this. Mediocre. I could be a physicist, and I would always just kind of be middle of the pack. And anyway, I was a physicist for 3 years when I graduated too. So like I did try it in the real world, but I struggled with it even then, right? When you have skill sets though, like say I'm kind of good at this, and I'm kind of good at something else that complements really well, and those two things combined make it rare. Now you're creating scarcity in the skills that you do have that make you valuable in some way. And so my last couple years in school, and then what I ended up doing, that's what brought us to Asheville. I got a job at Borg Warner in their, they have the turbocharger research and development of all North America happens in Arden. So I was in charge there of taking all the raw data from all the instruments and turning it into the thermodynamics stuff that the engineers needed, pressure ratios, efficiencies, all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty nerdy, but I was okay at it. But I decided that if I got into programming, that I could build whatever I wanted. You buy a couple $1,000 laptop and you can build apps. iPhone had just come out. I was an early adopter. I had an iPhone first generation thing. You can build apps. You can do all this stuff. I built an app. My first app was called Straight to Facebook, STFB. Every picture you took on your phone got just posted. No chance for remorse. It actually made it through Apple's legal at the time, and I got a really nasty letter from Facebook. But so I started kind of getting that idea that I could do app development and I could be a programmer. So I quit my job at Borg Warner and I got a job at this big consulting company, one of 1,200 engineers, and was on a little team there, had an amazing manager. And she asked me on my first day, like first interview, she's like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I was like, well, I see myself owning a software development company, and I'm here to learn how to build things at scale. And it was like probably the worst answer, but I was there, and that's probably why I was their second choice. The first guy said no when they hired me. But she said, look, if you give me 2 or 3 really good years, then I'll support you out the door. And so then when we started Anthroware, during the course at PCG, at that company, I realized that actually I was a pretty mediocre developer too. Like it was the same thing as physics. Like I'm just sort of middle of the pack. I have this ability to see the whole system and to see how it all works together and think about it from a strategic point of view and all this other stuff that I was really, really good at it. But my job as a developer, it was, like I said, mediocre. So I met my business partner there, and we started talking about like what would it mean to build software the right way, because we were kind of frustrated with how they did things in just in that corporate environment in general. It's not a dig on PCG. And we started Anthroware, and we told my manager Natalie, and like I said, she was amazing, by far the best manager I've ever had, and she was true to her word, and PCG became one of our biggest clients for the first 5 years of business. So again, like I had a good reputation there. My career was actually, I was being hard on myself earlier, but my career was doing pretty well in that company, and just having a good reputation there and them understanding who I was and what we were doing and how it could benefit them, it turned out really good for everybody. But yeah, I quit a lot of stuff to get here.
So with that, then, like, did you get advice from people? So you're in the corporate world and you got a master's degree, so you're smart. But, you know, taxes and what insurance, I mean, there's a lot of just stupid crap with business. Like, how did you figure that out? Who did you go to, or did you just wing it and you're still figuring it out?
Oh man, I think it's more on the wing it side than anything else. I think if I'd have known how difficult it would be at times, I don't know that I would have taken the leap. I'm really glad that I did. Like looking back, I'm really, really glad that we started the business. But I remember a conversation with my wife where we hadn't like funded the company really yet, and we needed to pay some designers to help like make our presentations look good for these proposals. And so Jason, we pro rata we funded a bank account, a business bank account with like $1,500. Like it was nothing. And I was like, to my wife Carly, I was like, hey, what's the worst that can happen? You know, like we lose a little bit of money, like, you know. So that, like, I think that there was a little bit of not knowing what we were getting into, that I'm really glad I didn't know, because, you know, I'm glad that we started now. Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting thing. Like whenever you hear about the startup world or entrepreneurship, one of the weirdest things is they never talk about spouses. Talk about everything in the world other than a spouse. And one of the things I always tell my viewers at home is like the real conversation, like everything doesn't matter until I have the wife conversation. Like the wife conversation is the conversation in life that matters. Everything else, I'm just, how did that go when you were starting that? Did you have to convince her? Did she believe in you? Like, what was that like?
She's always been exceptionally supportive. Yeah, she's weird, because I mean, even during the ups and downs, like we've always self-funded. We took on some private debt last year, and that was the first time we've had anything that even looked like an investor, I guess 2 years ago. And so we've always self-funded. So she's watched our bank account go down to zero a couple times in this course of things. She's had more confidence in it than I've had. The more interesting one is her dad, like the father-in-law conversation. He is also an entrepreneur, luckily, and we had a job. We won a contract early on. We won like this $500,000 contract. And it was awesome. And then we already celebrated this win. A week later, hey, this other person from the company calls. Hey, have anybody signed anything with you guys yet? I'm like, no. Like, yeah, we're not gonna do this. And so we were banking on it. I mean, that was it. That was gonna pay the bills. And so I remember calling her dad and being like, hey man, I'm gonna shut this thing down. I can't provide for your daughter. And, you know, just like had this whole speech like in my head. And he was like, you're just getting started. What are you doing? You gotta push through. And so like the support that I've had from my family has been absolutely exceptional. And I don't think, you know, that kind of support can be underrated. You got to be on the same page, like you said.
So when you started this, like financially, because again, another big thing is everybody wants to quit their day job like immediately. Like, were you funding this with your day job? You said you only took debt 2 years ago. So how did you pay the bills?
We've never carried a ton of debt. Debt's good though. Like debt's way better than equity. If you can get by with debt, do debt. You know, bet on yourself. Equity's expensive. We started, you know, like both of us we were successful in our IT careers, so we had, you know, some money, not a ton, but we got the first big client that we got, big being relative, that $100,000, we convinced them somehow to pay us half up front, which I don't know how that happened. God bless those people. They were awesome. And that helped. And then, I'd been working, I mean, as you do, like I was working really hard at my personal career before starting Anthroware. So I was working hard. I was working, 70, 80 hours a week. And the moment that I started Anthroware, I started reducing that time. And it's like, somebody's going to notice, I'm not putting in 70 hours a week anymore. Nobody noticed. So that first time, was a lot of work. I mean, the whole you're going to work a 100-hour thing that nobody wants to tell you is a real thing. It can be a real thing, right? And but you can't do that for long, especially with a wife and I had a 6-month-old baby when we started Anthroware. Those things are way more important. So my initial phase was I quit Anthroware, or quit PCG. Told Natalie, my manager, that I was going to do that, and she hired me half-time as a contractor. So now I was able to funnel even more of my time. And then as our contracts grew, we just basically got to the point where we could cash flow me first, and then we cash flowed Jason coming on full-time, and we had, like I said, another guy was full-time at that point, maybe 4 or 5 people right off the bat. So you can either risk personnel or you can risk cash. And when you don't have cash, you risk personnel. So you take on the work and then you go find the people. Or you stress your people a little bit more and say, hey, there's a payday in the horizon. Can we make it? And we've always said, yep, we can make it. And our team's always been there. So yeah, does that make sense?
And so you were already here in Asheville. Was there a reason to start this in Asheville then? Or is this just where you were at the time?
So Jason's in Santa Rosa, which is 45 minutes from San Francisco. Lots of companies start in San Francisco. There's reasons to do that. There's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't start a company in the state of California. North Carolina is a pretty good place to start a company. We thought about other places in North Carolina, Raleigh, Charlotte, bigger markets, and ultimately decided that for the vision we had and the kind of people we wanted to attract and the lifestyle that we ourselves wanted, we moved here to rock climb and mountain bike and do that kind of stuff, so we just sort of stayed. And even though we're remote distributed now, most of us are here as well.
And then, again, not getting into the blue or red of it, but a lot of times in politics now, they scream about entrepreneurs want to be in one place or the other. Do politics, again, and when we talk about taxes, regulations, whatever, does any of that matter in Asheville? Is there something like, yes, because of occupancy regulations, I love that about Asheville?
I think Asheville has a pretty good landing spot for entrepreneurs. And I don't know how much of it is the local politics or incentives, unless you're a certain size. Like if you're a big company, yeah, there's incentives. If you're an entrepreneur, your incentive is there a community here? Is there support? Are people going to be willing to help me, if I need help? Or is it going to be cutthroat competition and, whatever? Asheville being a small market, there's not enough resources out there for us to fight over them. So I have found personally that it's been a very, very supportive and kind place to start a business where we all just generally want to see each other succeed. So, it's the vibe of the thing,
And the final question on this part from the before. So apparently what I've been told by all the 21-year-olds is that, what was it, lifestyle businesses are for stupid people, and you really want to do a startup. Startups are where the real people go. So why didn't you do a startup? Why don't you have like the next Facebook?
So, I mean, straight to Facebook. The app was my golden ticket, didn't work. We started another product. We started a product in 2015 called Koyo, and it was an app. I don't know if anybody's been into like a networking event and you felt like you just wasted your time, or like you missed the connection you were supposed to make there. Anybody felt like that? So this app was like this bubble over your head that's like, hi, I'm John Jones. I'm looking for a badass user experience designer. Come talk to me if you're that person. And it worked. And we ran it in a bunch of events, and people generally liked it. Nobody wanted to buy it. And then the new phones came out with better radios than we've been using. We were like hacking the Bluetooth low energy stuff and doing weird things with it you're not supposed to do. And the range just increased, and our whole value prop went out the window. So we spent about $273,748.26 on that, of my money and Jason's money. And okay, but that's not really your question. So we have that experience, and I think a lot of the lessons that we learned in that have gone into our product playbook and how we want to validate ideas really early and not make those mistakes. But why we started Anthroware, one of the things that we were convincing ourselves of when we were thinking about being entrepreneurs is, it's like, hey, this is a proven business model. Like, we know we can do this. We're not inventing some new business model. This type of agency already exists. So I think there was a little bit of comfort in knowing that that business model was proven. And just to be honest, maybe I'm not, or at least wasn't at the time, brave enough to be a product guy. I highly respect people that start product companies. I think that they're just a different kind of person. But the other thing is, like, professional services companies, very few of them actually scale. And because you have to get it running like a machine. And like, for example, what we're trying to do now is get it so that Jason and I are basically irrelevant. It takes a lot of work, takes a lot of, not being on important sales calls because you have to have somebody else that can do it. It takes a lot of stepping back and thinking about succession and all this kind of stuff. But when you get to that point, you can take on more work because you've got the machine built. And when you got the machine built, then you can focus on things like how you build leverage into your company. You can do that, revenue quality, fee quality. You can do that with, your ability to make things faster, like this framework we're building. There's a lot of things that really move the needle. And the exits you see from like professional services company that have that process in place and that can scale, they're really good exits. So, it's not going to be the next Facebook. We're never going to have a market cap that size, but we can make a big impact with what we're doing and have fun doing it, and be really successful. Part of our purpose statement, I'm going to give myself kudos for wrapping my purpose statement back into this, is to create wealth and share it with the team. So everybody's on profit sharing, and we pay it quarterly. So we're incentivizing people to really take ownership of not only where we're going, but how we do things in a way that makes us valuable. I don't have any plans to sell Anthroware, but I know that making a company that's valuable to sell, it means it's valuable to own too. So we have a lot of those conversations about like, how are we building this thing so that it's valuable.
All right. So that is the end of the beginning chapter. Does anybody have questions? Oh, your question. Yeah, well, you had the beginning time question. Yeah, actually. Hey, Chris, can you I was like, what is the temperature on, Chris? What was it on?
67 degrees.
Okay.
You said it's 80 now, right?
74.
So how close are you to having that machine built so you have more time to work on other things? And what do you want to work on with that time?
I think we're pretty close. And, I don't know, sometimes things feel like they're close and they're not super close. I've learned that lesson a few times. But we're definitely on the right path. And I'd say the next like 2 or 3 years will be really telling, and then I'll get really excited about the next 5. So I'm conservative in that way, but I think that we've got most of the things that need to be working really well. And that's the biggest part of that, man, is the conversation around responsibility. People feeling responsible, feeling like profit sharing helps, right? Everybody feels like they've got ownership of the outcome. If we do well this quarter, we get bigger checks. But also like knowing where your responsibility is. I'm responsible for getting this done. Nobody else is going to do it. Accountability comes naturally after that. You don't have to worry about that. That's a management thing. Responsibility is a leadership thing. Instilling that creates leaders. Purpose statement, grow leaders, right? We're trying to fill people at the ranks of the company so that we get that big job and we got people that we can promote right off the bat. And so that like most of that machine is built already. Yeah.
So you mentioned wanting to work on top 1% difficult problems. What are the top 3 that come to your mind? Or categories or parts of the world, part of life?
I get surprised by how many problems there are out there. I think when I say top 1%, I think things like, like companies that have an additional bottom line to their business. We worked for a company a little while ago that they wanted to get 10,000 people in parts of the world that have like a really prolific sex trade, and give them an opportunity to have a job and wage that changes the direction of their family forever, so they don't have to be in that world. We worked with that company for a little while, and I'm a big fan, right? Called Next Door Photo. That felt like, to me, working on a top 1% problem. There's environmental problems. We've got one that we can't talk about that we're working on now that's in that category. There's all kinds of problems that need solved, man. Problems that, and if you can attach like a business around that and incentivize change, then I think that's pretty cool. That's all I meant.
So you keep talking about how you have always been good at things like physics and science, but it sounds like...
Mediocre at those things.
Okay, mediocre. You talk a lot about people and community, and those are obviously things that you really value. So I'm wondering, like, what helped that to develop in you and to grow your business in that way, and to be able to trust in community to help you instead of be competitive?
Man. So I think, if I understand your question, it's kind of when did those things start becoming like just part of the core operating principles of the company and why kind of deal?
For you personally, and how you brought that into your company as well.
Me personally, I think I've always kind of been that way. Just wanting to help people succeed. And I don't know, as long as I can remember, that's just, I can get really competitive in certain things, but they're pretty light in terms of things that matter. Like challenging my wife to the Apple Watch 7-day thing. I don't know. I mean, that got pretty cutthroat. Like things like that. when I'm whipping around, we're on vacation and I'm whipping around my friend's neighborhood on his gravel bike to get some extra points and stuff without her knowing. But the things that I think that matter, especially in an organization, understanding the bar, like the bar that you're of excellence that you're supposed to operate in, as kind of a rule of engagement at whatever organization, that's really important. It feels bad to me when I've seen people claw over top of somebody else to get ahead. It feels good to me when you see teams come together and achieve goals together. Everybody wins. So I think that my mindset with it is team wins feel much better than individual wins, right? And if that can become a cultural thing, with the company, then we've done something right. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do two more questions.
I have a green light. Green.
I'm sorry, I had to step out for just a minute. If this question was already asked, I apologize. But could you please share with us a little bit about the journey you and Jason went through to determine that you wanted to be business partners, and what does that partnership look like now, 10 years into it?
It's like a marriage. Business partners are, in my experience, something to be taken very seriously. And Jason and I, when we worked on the same team at PCG, and I knew that he was passionate about building the right thing to the point where, and we were both young and stupid, so like this is not a good example of what to do at a large consulting company, but we would get so angry on calls because I wanted to build something, I wanted to do it this way, he wanted to do it that way, and it's like making other people uncomfortable in the meetings because we were at each other's throat. But he would call me 5 minutes later and be like, hey, bro, how's your family doing? And so like the separation of the passion for fighting for what he needed to fight for, fighting for what I needed to fight for, was completely separate from the emotion of our relationship. And then we had a lot of conversations about what we would change, how we would do things. It's like, all right, the word came down from on high that we need to build this stupid feature that nobody's going to use. Like, why? You never get an answer. Versus being at the front of that cycle, that kind of thing. And we finally, I just whipped out a spreadsheet and ran some numbers that were totally wrong. I was like, we could be millionaires in like a year. Let's do this. And it was probably a little too bullish about my business plan, but I think our relationship was already really strong at that point. We knew we worked really well together. We knew that we could argue about work stuff and still be okay. That means there's a lot of trust there, and I think that's been really important. We've had ups and downs. I mean, we've been around 10 years, and there's been a couple times where, we've really thought about our roles. And there's been times where we've been completely clobbering each other. Like it's too blurry and it causes confusion for the rest of the team. And so we've made maybe like 3-4 years ago, we made some really distinct changes into like, this is what John does. This is what Jason does. If daddy says no to ice cream, don't go ask mommy. It's just like so we had to put those boundaries in place. And to be mature enough to know that there was problems and that we needed to do that. As always, he's still like easily one of my best friends. Yep.
I work a lot around young people, and 2 of them are here. And it's interesting now, I have 4 children, and I'm going through this process myself. I knew what I wanted to do when I was 10 years old. I'm finding out, especially as I get older and have children, that's not what everyone else's lifestyle is like. And most people go to school and they don't know what they go to college and they have no idea what they want to do. And so we had a podcast where we interviewed someone, and they made a great point, which is you don't want to encourage students to go into what they're passionate about because they don't have a clue what they're passionate about, but what they're interested in. And if you have students who are interested in STEM or coding, technology fields, what advice do you have for them coming from your perspective? I ask this question a lot, but I like to hear your thoughts on this.
Thank you, Charles. Man, I had such a luxurious education. The jokes I made earlier about quitting this and quitting that, I learned a lot about business before I quit the business school. Even being a mediocre scientist, I learned a ton about how to build a hypothesis, run an experiment, and apply my learning to my current best thinking, even if I was wrong, which is obviously a large part of the playbook at Anthroware. With any kind of STEM stuff, you learn how to learn. You can't go wrong. Like some of those decisions, what I would say to young people is, it's actually a really hard thing to screw up. If you go into any of those things, following your interests, and you learn how to learn, then it's kind of hard to mess up that decision. You're going to be fine. But back to that concept of those skill sets, the skill stack, right? I was a mediocre physicist, but I learned how to run experiments and apply current, the new information to the current best thinking and change the model. Applying that with some business sense. Now I'm a business model designer. Applying that with an interest in design. I'm not a designer. Don't put me in front of a design tool. An interest in design, knowing how to speak to designers, knowing what's good and what's a good process, what's not a good process. Being able to feed back into those things. All of a sudden, you've got like a skill set that turns into a playbook that you can build a business around. So it's a combination of things. It's never one thing. And there are very few like true specialists these days. The access we have to information, the ability to learn things. There's so many resources now that, I think that I look at that, unique skill stack and think about how you might apply that.
All right, great. Then we will go to the final chapter of this, and we'll wrap up and eat a lot of cookies and go home. Okay, so I think the big question about the future is, when will ChatGPT kill your business?
So I think that there's a lot of, with social media, right? Social media came about, we didn't know what a social media manager was, for example. Created jobs. There's a lot of good things that happen with social media. You get to connect with people that you otherwise wouldn't be connected with. You get, like your customized Twitter feed. You have TV that's exactly the kind of niche that you want to watch, which, like, this is why you're here, right? But, also there's a dark side of that whole revolutionary time where, maybe we were a little fast and loose with information at some point somewhere. The scandalizing kind of inflammatory type messages that a few people push out into that world can create a lot of damage, right? So there's a good side and a bad side. These large language models, it feels like it happened overnight. This is stuff that people have been working on for decades. The reason why it's a big deal is because of the accessibility that it's given people to just talk to it in a normal way. Has anybody seen like the hype curve, where it's like this big, huge, steep curve of hype, and then it just drops? and it's in the trough. They call it the trough of disillusionment. And then it kind of evens out into like the actual use case of whatever technology. So we're definitely on the hype curve of ChatGPT or any of the large language models. There are definitely amazing things you can do with it that will have a huge impact on how we work, how we do business, how we have our, organize our personal life, make things easier. It's awesome. I'm very, very, very excited about it. I haven't been this excited about a technological advancement, I don't think, ever. But I think at the end of the day, once we get through that hype curve, we're going to find out this is another tool in the toolbox, and we're going to be able to do amazing things with it. It has greatly increased the barrier for businesses to come in, use this tool, and use innovation and technology as their moat with their business. I guess the thing that makes it hard to replicate. So I think that there's going to be a lot more work for experienced designers, business model designers. There's a lot of things that this thing can do that we haven't thought of yet. So I'm not that worried about it taking my job or anybody else's job. I'm pretty much just excited about what we can do. But I am glad that there's some caution about how fast we're moving with it. I think that's probably smart.
So you don't think, because I've actually talked with developers that I've been shocked, where they say within 10 years, the coding profession is gone. And like not layman people, like actual coders think that. Do you think it's anywhere near that significant?
Yeah, I do. But I think that there's always going to be other work that requires that. Like they're going to be applying their brain power to other things. And they're going to be, think about, so there's another, gosh, I'm such a visual person. I wish we had like a thing. When you think about disruptors, like true disruptors, either disruptive product, disruptive whatever, there's an incumbent where the performance is increasing gradually over time, but it's pretty stagnant. And then there's the disrupting thing comes in at a lower performance. In at least one product dimension, this thing is worse, way worse. But it's got the capability to grow so fast that it will overtake the incumbent. You can apply that model to jobs and see that, like, you might take front-end code and say that might go away first, right? So it's more of well, what are those really smart people going to be doing? We can't even imagine what that is yet. It's not like we're going to not need smart people anymore. They're just going to have different jobs. There's a whole frontier of programming with cells and physical things. We can program biology. We haven't even tapped into that yet. So, no, I'm not scared.
Oh, fair enough. So then with AI and with all the things and the metaverse and all that, what do you look at, like, what do you think Anthroware is going to look like in 5 years or 10 years, either from a size standpoint or from a product standpoint? Do you think you're kind of sort of doing what you did now, only iterate up, or will it be like 300 employees in San Francisco or something?
I'm not scared of the 300 employees model. Well, I don't have a head count in mind. I think my success criteria is probably, there's probably different goals there than just financial or head count. Head count with professional services doesn't mean that you're scaling your business. It means that you're linearly just increasing head count, or it could mean that. 5 or 10 years, I could see the competitive intelligence stuff that we're doing taking off. I could see, I would like to see, our culture to be really close to what it is now. I think that's one of the main success criteria for me, is that we have this environment where people want to be here. They don't want to work at Anthroware for 2 years and move on because it's a rung in the ladder. They want to be there and be part of the team for a long time. I think if we can beat the stats there, everybody will be really proud. So, yeah, hard to say, you know.
Do you ever worry, like I think about that with Silicon Dojo for me, this is kind of the job I want for the next 20 or 30 years. Like I'm literally building my own job. Like I don't want to exit or whatever. Do you get worried with what you've built that you might be the weakest link? That it might actually you might actually become the problem, and then what do you do then?
I think I'm pretty decent at my job right now. And I'm being totally serious. Like I wasn't very good at it for the first couple years, and then I got like a little bit better, and then now with the lessons that we've learned, I think I'm pretty good at my job. But I don't know, like I'm really happy if a bunch of stuff is just floating around, it's not nailed down. I can operate in that environment really well. When your company reaches a certain level of maturity, I don't think that's very effective. I think you have to have a lot more discipline than I have with processes and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I would not be surprised if in 5 years we reach some of those goals if there wasn't a new CEO of Anthroware. And I have plenty of other things that I'm happy to work on.
I mean, can you deal with that from an ego standpoint? Because a lot of people don't realize, like, you get that title and you get that, and then when it's time to let go of it, it's like even the salary and everything else, but then all of a sudden you're no longer.
We've started that succession plan now, and I don't think I have. I could be wrong, but I've been giving up parts of my job for the past few years, and it hasn't. I'm very happy that other people are doing those things. They're doing it better than I was doing it. And I don't imagine that, you know, my identity would be too disrupted by that. If I was just sitting around twiddling my thumbs, I would have an identity issue, sure. But we've got a few other projects that we're working on that I will happily I'll just be a co-founder and work on special projects somewhere, and it'll be great. I'm happy. I'm excited about that.
Oh,
yeah.
Fair enough. So going into the future, again, back to the LEDs, with the issues in Asheville going on now in the current politics, like this is actually an issue for me with Silicon Dojo. When my wife and I moved here and we were looking at this 4 or 5 years ago, you could still buy houses for $100,000 to $200,000. So when I was thinking about hiring employees and how this would work, there was a model. And now, holy crap, it gets to be me for a long time. I'm not even sure how this model works anymore. But for you, with real estate prices going through the roof, with all the real changes in Asheville, does this actually affect you?
I mean, not that much. I mean, I care about it probably more than it actually affects me. I think that because we are remote first now, we can hire smart people wherever they are. It's probably not going to affect us that much. We haven't run into a wall where it's like difficult for us to find talent because I think our culture attracts good people. But I think it's harder and harder for them to, like say, the guy that we hired in Charlotte loves the mountains. I don't think it's easy for him to come here, you know, like to your point there. So from a business standpoint, no. I mean, I live in this area and love it. Like I would like to see some changes probably. Yeah.
And are you like married to Asheville? So you said Santa Rosa is where your partner is. Could you pick up whatever is here? Like, is there a thought process of moving it somewhere else, or is there you just here?
No, I think there's a good connection with the vibe of our brand and our little mountain town here. I think it works. Would it work in another city? Sure. But I do think that like as flat as it is with technology, geography does still matter. It would probably be a second presence somewhere more than we have to move from Asheville. So.
Okay, getting to the few of the final questions. What tech are you actually excited about? Like what? So ChatGPT and that kind of thing you're excited about. Is there anything else? Any new frameworks or SDKs or anything?
ChatGPT, I'm moderately excited about. I think the miniaturized versions of these things that can run off the cloud on your devices are more exciting. I think we're going to see a lot more cool stuff with that. And you know, you're able to protect your proprietary data. So I won't answer this question, but I would ask the question, if technology is not your moat when you're using some of these things to build amazing tools, then like what is your moat? And I think those questions are going to be really neat to answer. I'm pretty excited to jump into that space. We're building apps for that now. I mean, it's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That's awesome. Okay, so if you zigged when you should have zagged with whatever is currently going on with the economy and Anthroware blew up, what would you reskill as? So we got some people that they're already professionals, but they're looking, they want to be in technology, but a different skill set. So if everything just blew up, you couldn't go back to Anthroware, is there something in technology you would focus on again that you're interested in?
I'm at this point I have adjacent technology experience, but I haven't been doing hard technology in a long time. It would be really tough for me to jump in and be a productive coder, for example. If I had to go get a job right now, I would probably really dig just the product side, like being head of product, like maybe working at a startup, something like that, something where I could use some of those skills. On the other hand, my favorite part of my job right now is working with my team and doing the grow leaders part of that mission statement. So, yeah, I might be happier just sticking with that. Yeah.
And then, especially since we've got the high schoolers in here too. So if you were 18, so you're 18, you're looking for something to do till you're 40, you're starting now, where would you start?
I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do when I was 18. But I do think like the hard sciences, math, technology, research, that kind of stuff, a lot of people put engineers in a box and they're like, oh yeah, you're just this, you think with this one half of your brain and, and some of the most creative, amazing people that I have met have been in those fields because they're doing all the wacky stuff on the fringe. So I would say, don't worry so much, worry about finding the people doing the coolest stuff. Wherever you're doing, find the people that are doing the coolest part of it and go attach yourself to those people. And your mind will be expanded and you'll be successful. More successful than you can imagine when you're 18, that's for sure.
And then, final couple of questions. Are you hiring, especially interns?
Oh gosh, I am so confused about our intern program right now, so I'm going to probably say the answer is more likely no than yes.
Why? That's actually a good thing for people to hear. Why are you confused about your intern program?
We've done intern programs a few times in the past. Last year it turned out fine. This year we're just so busy that the concern is that an intern is coming to get very crappy pay because in exchange for their time, because they're going to learn something from you. So there's a responsibility if you're offering an internship to give that person skills. That's why you're paying them crap. And I don't know that we have the time to give interns a good experience with that side of things because we're so busy. So I'm reading the tea leaves. We haven't made any decisions, but I don't think that we're going to have an internship program this summer. We're not hiring at the moment. We will potentially be hiring in the next couple of months for product design, research, potentially a developer, probably in the next 3 or 4 months. And those recs will be out. And I would wager that one of those is entry level. So, yeah.
idea. So that's about it then. Do you have a final, we'll have some final questions after this, but do you have a final word for the last chapter of your story?
But was this good or horrible? Yes. Okay. Well, more good than horrible? Okay. All right.
Very honest.
I'm an honest guy.
Very shocking.
Shocking? That was the word you chose? Questions?
Final questions.
You mentioned
Microphone.
You mentioned your business partner and how you guys had this relationship before you went into business together. Having been part of some small businesses myself, that relationship can kind of get messy. It's like going into business with family or something. But you need that cohesiveness, and you need that read each other's mind type of stuff to go on. And I'm sure you promote this in your company. How do you manage that, and also figure out how to inhibit the more toxic aspects of close relationships in business and stuff, or within the company?
Oh, man. Jason and I think I explained it when I first said that, is feels like being married in a way. And we're committed to making this work. Just like a marriage, you don't always love the other person, but you're committed, right? You stay there. You work through that, and then you're better. And so I think with Jason and I being early business partners, starting the company from nothing, what we have is human capital, sweat equity. He's got a skill set that I don't have, and I have a skill set that he doesn't have. So we're both working for nothing or next to nothing because we have complementary skill sets. So being friends with him and having a commitment to we're going to treat each other well, even if we don't like each other, even if we have to have those hard conversations where it's he's like, hey, John, do you really work? What's all this business development stuff that you do, I'm glad somebody laughed at that. But when you have those hard conversations, you've got a basis for that, and the basis is that you're committed to making the business work, right? But that's different than if you've been working on a business for a while and you're looking for a business partner. There's different types of capital. There's financial capital, there's human capital, which I said is know-how, and there's social capital, which is you can open doors for me that I wouldn't normally get, otherwise. And, at this stage, if for example, if I was looking to take on a business partner now, then they're going to have to hit on all three of those for it to be a good deal, because we don't have the relationship and the trust and the 10 years of yelling at each other and still loving each other, right? But I do think that commitment's a big piece. I think that the whole business is business thing is total horse patootie, because everybody brings their full self to work, and it's magnified with leadership. And so, and even more so if it's ownership. So I think that you've got to sort of drag through the horse patootie together and be willing to figure it out. Is that what you asked me?
And when you cultivate that mentality for your company, these people that have been together for 2 years or 3 years, not necessarily 10 or 20, like in the instance with your partner, how is the culture, or what are the general guidelines through the company that are okay, this is kind of the relationship that we want to have with one another, or, right?
Well, you're not supposed to use the F word, right? Family, with business. So I won't do that. And I think that's really good advice, is to keep that separate. At work, you have to focus on the work stuff. Outside of work, we love each other. That means that if you've been at the company for 2 years and you leave, I can support you in your next job. I can be excited and happy for you because I love you, right? But that's outside of the business piece. So at work, it's work. it's business. Outside of work, you can build a culture where you're accepting that whole person and caring for them. Because, I mean, there's people that, I want to have relationships with people that leave and go do something else. So, and I think that that's the thing that we've tried to do culturally. There have been people that have left Anthroware, and, you know, it's like whatever the old Viking proverb, you know, may the bridges you burn light your way forward kind of deal, and double bird strike out the door. And I don't have a relationship with those people, but I don't harbor any grudge either, right? And I still want to see them succeed. So, you know, I would rather have a culture where people can just feel like this is a great place to be. I want to stay. But if you want to go, I don't want to keep you here if you want to go. I want you to be successful.
Yeah, like the vibe, I guess.
Huh?
The vibe, how you'd said before, the vibe.
The vibe, yeah. I feel like I've said that a lot. I don't usually say vibe that much, but
it's a good word.
Yeah, I'm digging it tonight.
Any more questions? Yep.
Are your clients, or how many of your clients are asking for GPT and emerging AI integrations and products? And how do you evaluate whether those are foolish requests or smart requests, and how many of them are foolish?
That's a great question. All of them.
They're all foolish?
No,
Or all of them are
asking
asking?
for it. So our clients, they'll, so right, like we're the active problem solver. They have a problem, they know they want a solution, they're willing to pay for it, but they don't know how to fix it. So when they talk to us about ChatGPT, the way they'll ask is like, we don't want to sleep on this. This seems like a really big deal. How might we integrate this into what we're doing? And we can say, well, we can explore that and do it in a way that makes you money. And that way it's not a, you know, I had this great idea, you need to do this. It's more of a, all right, where does this fit on the roadmap of what we're doing? Because we're a wisdom firm, right? There's different types of professional services firms. There are intellect firms where you lock a bunch of PhDs in a room and they're working on a problem that never's been solved before, and you know, that's definitely not us. There's method firms where you've gotten so good at a process that you're able to hire junior level people, train them, and have a high quality outcome. Those are generally very price sensitive, very almost commoditized. It's a great way to make money. It's like a good business model. I'm not bagging that at all, but that's just not what we are. We're a wisdom firm, which means we get hired because we've been there, done that, and we're helping them design an elegant solution to a problem. They don't know what the solution is. Everybody's asking about ChatGPT because it's everywhere. And it's awesome. I mean, think about it, like you can just pile a bunch of information on the floor and say, make sense of that for me. And it can do that. It's way cool. But our clients are trained to like ask a question a different way. That's a lot more effective for them, I think.
And if you could summarize it, where's the signal and where's the noise for what is a good idea to do with GPT to integrate into products these days?
I think it goes back to protection. So I keep saying the word moat. I hope everybody knows what I mean. But what I mean is like you can have a great idea, a great market. It's a big high-level pain point. Your solution is delightful. But if it's super easy for you to build it and you don't have any intellectual property, then somebody else could just do the same idea. So thinking about how to protect that idea will put you in the mindset of thinking about ideas that are protectable. And if all those three other things, you know, are lining up, then you've got a pretty viable go at it. It's got to be all four. And with the ChatGPT stuff, it seems like the moat is the biggest question. Investors are asking that question too. You know, investors are saying like, how do we invest in this? It's not your technology. You're using somebody else's technology. It's really interesting.
Any more questions?
Do you have, so can you solve any technical problem? No. No? Do you try to tackle any problem do you have favorite problems? Do you specialize in specific type of problems, in solving specific type of?
Yeah, I think we probably have favorites where we've done it a few times and we're confident that we can do it. When you have problems that are kind of on that fringe, from a technology standpoint, the barrier of solving those problems is really high. So if you, like, just based on the type of company that we are, if you've got some innovative thing that you're really pushing the edge of a technology, or you're trying to invent something new, I don't think many funders would pay money for a third party to do that in lieu of building their own team, because that technology itself becomes the value of the company. So you want that value in-house. We generally solve problems around processes, inefficiencies, building capacity. Hate to use the word digital transformation, but that's what businesses ask for, where the experience sucks. It's costing them a lot of dollars and way too much time. And we can go in and we can innovate the experience, we can innovate the business model, but we don't really innovate technology all that much. Because those big innovations, those are like singularly focused, well-funded teams doing innovative stuff. That's tough. That's a tough sell for a consultancy, no matter the size. Like it would be hard for a company that has that kind of cash that wants to solve a big problem nobody's ever solved before. It'd be tough for them to hire McKinsey or Accenture or any other the biggest consulting companies you can imagine. It's just more efficient to build that into a team. So you kind of, I mean, it's about like knowing what lane you're really good at swimming in, I think. Does that help? Yeah.
So McKinsey, it sounds like, is an intellect firm. Is that how you would categorize them? You mentioned an intellect, a wisdom, and a method.
I wouldn't call McKinsey an intellect firm, no. Intellect firm, that would be like a think tank. I don't have an example right off the top of my head.
The reason I ask is because how do you differentiate between intellect, wisdom, and method? I feel like intellect is more of those PhDs in a room kind of approach, and
for sure, but that's not McKinsey. McKinsey are brand new MBAs that they charge $10,000 a day for. Mm-hmm. They take your watch and make you tell them what time it is, or ask them what time it is. McKinsey Digital solved the same kind of problems that Anthroware solves with like 8 times the budget and 300 people. They're not an intellect firm. An intellect firm would be like a think tank that's tackling, world hunger or something like that.
Got it. What is the difference between a wisdom firm and a method firm then? It seems like those two things are...
So wisdom firms, you generally, it's a good question. You generally, you're getting paid for what you know, not your hours. So there's only a certain amount of money that you would pay me for my time. But if you have a, $10 million problem and I can solve it for $1 million, you don't care how much time it takes me to fix it. That's a great deal, right? So your wisdom firms generally are decoupling their time with, they're valuing the size of the problem and pricing based on that. Does that make sense?
It does, and they're following their own method to get to that.
Yes.
You mentioned your playbook.
Method firms are like, their leverage is the way that they create more profitability is lowering their cost of people. So you have the same or similar outcome with fewer people or less experienced people that I can pay less or whatever. And, I wish I could think, I'm tired, so I'm not thinking of a good example. A lot of marketing companies a lot of marketing is fairly commoditized. There are certain companies that I think are doing an excellent job with marketing, but a lot of marketing is fairly commoditized. I would put those firms in that method box. And look, method is a perfectly good business model. There's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. It's just like knowing which model you're in, you know?
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mechanic says, I can fix your car for $100. The guy says, okay. He takes a screwdriver, returns a screw. He says, that'll be $100. And the guy says, well, all you did was turn a screw. He said, well, turning a screw is $1. Knowing which screw to turn and how much to turn it was $99.
Wisdom firm. Yep, great example. Thank you.
So one final question, if we got any last questions, and then you can go eat cookies and have conversations. Oh, Chris, one last question.
It's a question for Eli.
Uh-oh.
You've been talking about wanting to do the fireside chat for a while now.
Yeah.
How do you feel at this moment?
I feel good. I think I feel good. Yeah, I feel pretty good.
This one was okay, but you never know. The next one could be way better.
Yeah, no, it went really well. I'm a little concerned how long it went because I noticed we lost some people on the way, but I actually don't know if that's bad. I think it's like that whole thing, like, what are you measuring off of? We still got 20 plus people here. So yeah, no, overall, I think I'm pretty happy with it. Chairs are nice. I do like the chairs.
Yeah, well, thank you for putting it together.
Yeah. Okay, so that is the end. So again, eat some cookies and drink some soda or whatever. Your homework, because this is an educational experience, your homework is this month to go have a cup of coffee with somebody and learn about what the hell it is that they do. Remember, it's relationships. It's, hey, do you know anybody hiring interns? Why, actually, I do. That's what you do. Because you notice that. You notice at the end. I'm like, hey, are you hiring interns? And you just do that 1,000 times and somebody will say yes. So,
We usually do.
usually.
Check back.